Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto Naruto Next Generation discussion on the follow-up from Boruto Chapter 80. And today, I wanted to talk to you guys about something that one of you guys down in the comment section brought to my attention regarding this whole Boruto time skip and why there's so much riding on this time skip than we ever actually thought about. It's no longer just this mythological occurrence, this random time skip that you had people worrying and losing hope would never happen, despite the fact that we were told by Ikimoto it was coming, and Naruto vets such as myself were saying that this is just like Kishimoto saying soon about the year Kakashi. Soon was in reference to story events and not in real time. However, now that the time skip is indeed finally here and happening in only a few weeks, one of you guys said that the Boruto manga can't go the direction I've been warning. I believe it's going to end up being the case, which is that the manga comes out of the time skip after a high point and goes into a slower setup to establish the threat that we get post time skip and expand the world building for a couple of slower arcs that have a few fights mixed in, but it isn't going to bear fruit until we get a couple arcs into the time skip itself. And I want to address just the overall danger that Boruto's time skip actually presents to us as a community. The viewer in question said that if Boruto's manga does go this route, it's a giant mistake because Boruto with Kawaki and Ada's Shinjutsu renewed the hype by the series that hadn't been seen and felt online for years now, and it's better to just come out the time skip picking things up exactly where they left off, which is Konoha hunting Boruto and Sasuke, and Sasuke having to deal with that threat in the short term while also regaining his trust in Boruto. Now, I said I think we're gonna get more than likely what we got in the first couple arcs of Naruto post time skip, which is volume 28 onward, which is the first time skip gave us the Kazekage rescue arc and the Tenchi Bridge arc, two arcs that in manga format were notoriously slow amongst the community back in the day, and then the second time skip that we got being the 6-month time skip between the events of the Akatsuki suppression arc and the Itachi pursuit arc, with the Itachi pursuit arc, the first half of that arc being slower pace and a fourth of the arc literally being the building up of Team Heavy and Sasuke and Jiraiya meeting with Team 7 and giving them the order to hunt down Itachi. I said I believe that we're gonna go one of those two routes where it's either a super slow burn like the first two arcs post time skip, where they start off with a quick, mostly one-sided battle and then have a few skirmishes here or there that don't push the plot forward super far, and then you get the climax that actually pushes the narrative in a meaningful direction. Or we go with the Itachi arc where you start off with a super quick fight that's one-sided and heavy on narrative, and it has a huge plot twist while it then slows down before peaking in the middle of the arc and then ending with a cliffhanger, which for reference for a monthly manga, if the arc is 12 to 16 chapters, you basically be going 4 to 6 chapters to just set up after a quick battle that takes place. And we all saw how the community lost their minds when this approach was taken with the Code Assault arc in manga format, waiting months to get that climax battle that ended up being wrapped up in 2.5 episodes in anime format. Basically Code versus Boruto and Kawaki, and then Kawaki versus Momoshiki, and the 4 episodes prior to that were enough to adapt the 8 chapters that we had to slog through before this. Well, I see the worry of the viewer, and I'll play devil's advocate. I do see the point of view and perspective that some fans have. Basically, they've been waiting since 2016 to see a teenage Boruto and the members of Team 7. Basically 7 years. And they want to explore what led to Konoha being destroyed. It was a large part of the reason Boruto's manga did as well as it did so early on, because the first volume we had that major what the hell is going on factor. It drove the sales from the flash forward sequence, and there was a hope that once we got out the movie recap that we just jump ahead into the flash forward sequence and we get our answers. But when that didn't happen and the story continued on that slow burn towards what would eventually be chapter 87 years later, interest in the manga, it fell off, the sales dropped, and you had a ton of people saying, I'll check things out when we get to Boruto's time skip. I'll check things out when we get to Boruto Shippuden. That's where a lot of interest was for a lot of casual fans, which brings me to the next point of concern, which is that due to waiting 7 whole years, you got a lot of people who set their expectations for the time skip to a certain point where, due to it being this mythological thing in stature, this almighty time skip, they don't get exactly what they've had built up in their heads. The time skip automatically becomes a failure. If we come out the time skip and Boruto doesn't have the Jogan and Sasuke doesn't have a new arm and Boruto isn't using all Momoshiki's powers and Code's Ten-Tails army isn't on a rampage destroying the village and Himawari doesn't have a Tenseigan, Hanabi isn't doing OnlyFans, you're gonna have some people, okay, maybe just me with that Hanabi OnlyFans thing, but you're gonna have some people, vocal minority, trashing the story because it didn't live up to the expectations. It's why when I do do the Boruto fan theories, I make a point in the video to stress, hey, this is a fan theory we're discussing. It's coming from here based off this information given. This is what the narrative impact would be, and this would be a good idea or this would be a bad idea, and then I leave it off saying, give me your next fan theory, because I don't want our community to go through what the Star Wars community did, which I am a huge part of. As a fan, I consume a lot of Star Wars content, and I remember vehemently what happened when Snoke wasn't revealed as some super elite Sith Lord, but instead he was revealed as fodder. There were a lot of fans that got outraged because the imaginations ran wild for the years that we had to wait between episodes 7 and episode 8. Snoke wasn't Plagueis. Snoke wasn't some ancient Sith. Snoke was just an run-of-the-mill fodder. He was Anbu Black Ops in the Star Wars universe, basically. He amounted to nothing. And that left a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouth, and it damaged the brand to a certain degree, and that's a huge problem. But it's one that when it comes to Boruto, it's kind of unavoidable, because we took the approach of opening the story with this dramatic flash forward sequence and then telling the story from the beginning, which it's a long tested story method, using that bait and switch, starting with something to grab the attention of readers and then telling the story how we actually got there. But I think the problem that you run into with a lot of modern shonen fans is that they're so used to a story being told in chronological order, where you meet the main character, dive into the world, and then the hero goes on the hero's journey, the hero beats the main villain at the end of the story, and then everything's wrapped up. Teasing something like this, that's more of an advanced form of storytelling. It's an advanced storytelling tool, and I think it backfired, because most shonen fans, particularly battle shonen fans, are used to the basic storytelling method, the beginning, middle, and end. And this doesn't just extend to just battle shonen. If you just look at the highest selling titles from Shueisha this year, you see that they all use the same method with two slight exceptions. Oshinoko sold 1.7 million volumes this year as of June 2023. It starts off the story at the very beginning in terms of the start of events, and it moves the story from there. My Hero Academia sold 1.8 million copies so far. It started the story at the very start, but we had that narrative statement from an older Deku saying, this is the story how I became the #1 hero, but the story is still unfolding in chronological order. Spy Family sold 2.9 million, and it tells a chronological story. One Piece is at 3.9 million, and it tells a chronological story. Jujutsu Kaisen is at 3.9 million, and it opens up the scene with a near future moment, and it tells a chronological story. Slam Dunk at 4 million tells a chronological story. Chainsaw Man at 4.5 million sold so far this year tells a chronological story. Boruto's contemporary Dragon Ball Super has only sold 300,000 off of one manga volume this year, with a second volume coming in August. Boruto didn't even sell 600,000 copies last year in terms of physical sales. So you could make the argument that amongst his contemporaries, Boruto doesn't sell as well. So maybe there was something that was done as a bad decision with this being a monthly manga. Maybe they shouldn't have gone the route that they did. Maybe that's why expectations have risen so much for the time skip. Maybe they should have just started things off with Boruto getting the Chroma Seal from Momoshiki and just told a chronological story from there, because it's something that clearly works for shonen. And I think that that's an important distinction to make, because the difference with Boruto from all those other titles that we saw is it very well could be the fact that we're starting at what you could argue is the middle portion of the story. I've seen some people say that might be the very ending of the story. It takes place, there are no answers, and it's a full 4 years into the future after the versus Momoshiki arc, which you know based off of the character sheet for Boruto in anime episode number 1, where Boruto is listed as 16 years old, and at the end of Boruto part 1, Boruto's still 12, though he's 12 closer to 13 given Amado's 6-month statement, but he's still 12 years old. That dystopian future led to what I think we can agree is the opposite effect. Instead of building up excitement, it led to impatience, and for a time it contributed to a lack of disinterest in the story. For a time, as it was told in chronological order, for a time the words Boruto time skip were going higher in the search data that I was seeing than any current events that we had in the manga. And it wasn't until we got the battles with Naruto versus Delta and Naruto and Sasuke versus Jigen and the aftermath of Baryon Mode versus Ishiki, where Naruto lost Kurama and Sasuke lost the Rinnegan. It wasn't until during that time that the search traffic, particularly on YouTube, was more so focused on the current events that were going on in the story than the time skip that people wanted. And when the anime adapted those chapters, you had a similar spike that took place. You look at the Google search data, you look at the social media data, you look at the YouTube search data. During that time period, people focused on the then and now opposed to the mythological time skip. When Shinjutsu got casted in the series by Ada, it became clear that we were headed towards a time skip, and the anticipation was growing, and people who dropped Boruto, people who I'm not gonna name, who are hating on it for clout like absolute clowns, missing the nose on social media, are suddenly sucking it off like an OnlyFans model working hard for that $3.99 video that she's sending out to her subscribers. But that's why this is so tricky, because you had something that happened that pulled in even the staunchest Boruto haters to say, yeah, I enjoy the series and I've been a closet fan for so long. I was just hating on it for clout. My opinion's been changed, yada, yada, yada. You've been able to pull those people back in, and you now have momentum. You have to move it forward. I do believe we're in that dangerous territory where people will jump off if it's not everything that they wanted. But I also believe taking the route that Attack on Titan did, which Attack on Titan was also a monthly manga, taking the time to go through a slower period to set all the pieces might be what's best for the story, even though it's going to lead to some suffering on the short end, because it leads to all the chaos that we saw the anime adapt for seasons 3 on. It basically took 17 months of a monthly manga doing setup, building for the reveal of the Beast Titan, and then after that reveal the stuff that we went into with like Levi versus Kenny and Levi versus the Beast Titan. None of that stuff happens without those 17 months of buildup where things slow down. We don't get to the crazy stuff that's going on in the final arc of Attack on Titan without those 17 months of buildup. But a big part of why it worked was the narrative was strong and it was character driven, most importantly, and it also had a ton of world building, new information given to it. But with a sequel like Boruto, we have to lean harder into the narrative and character focus, because the world that we have, it's already pre-established from 72 volumes of Naruto, 73 counting Naruto Gaiden. There isn't much that we don't know about the Naruto world unless we explore the Sage regions or we explore the Otsutsuki dimensions. We lean more so into the Otsutsuki lore that we still don't have full answers for. Things like Shinjutsu and etc., it can work if they're worked into the narrative correctly. But I worry that we as a community, we treated the time skip like that girl that you've built up in your head was going to be super perfect, but once you get her, you see that she's not exactly what you expect her to be. You look at her and you think like, oh my God, like she's gonna be super freaky, super into it when we have sex. And then when you actually have sex with her, she's just in the missionary, which I've had that happen. Total snooze fest. However, that being said, I'm so curious to know how you guys feel about that concern. While you think that over, click here to watch these other Naruto Explained videos.